Hello everyone, and welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 208. Today is Sunday, November 26, 2017, and I'm glad you can join me today. Gorgeous day today, beautiful fall day, so had to record outside. There was some sort of I could have totally recorded yesterday afternoon, but we were on a fishy friends extravaganza that used up all the daylight. So we're recording today and calling it good. Not that I've necessarily, managed to do very much in the meantime, but yeah, oh well. I had lots and lots of knitting time this weekend, which was lovely. Long weekend, so I had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, which was lovely. Ended up having travel day Wednesday, then lots of hanging out with my husband's family, and then basically a travel day on Saturday. So I was hell-bent to finish a pair of socks, and I did, so that was great, so I can show you guys, and then write the note for the recipient and send it on its way. I also have to laugh a little bit because I'm participating in the Wollmeise for All Seasons Christmas swap, and I totally bought very lovely stuff for my partner and left it in my in-laws' van. So I was like, no! So, I felt very silly. But, whatever. We'll figure something out. I got one thing for me, one thing for my dad, and then one thing for my swap partner. I was like, no, why? So, whatever. My mother-in-law offered to mail it back, so it shouldn't be a big deal. I just hate when that happens, you know what I mean? It was the case where when we were emptying ourselves in the van, I was insufficiently coated and was in such a rush that I was like, chocolate. Focus on the chocolate. I was like, purr. Now what was funny though is I never broke out my winter coat the entire time I was there. It was unseasonably warm. But such is life. So this is what I finished. This is my simple sock pattern called Just Ribbing. It's no longer available on the internet, but apparently if you email the designer, she'll email you a copy, so not too crazy. Or what is it? The designer had a blog and doesn't have to blog anymore, so. So this is the purpley magenta bits are Wollmeise Twin in a purple Versace color. So Versace is effectively whatever in German. And then the stripy bits are very colorful yarnings super sock in the kumquat colorway. So we have 2 whole socks, and then all of the ends are very well woven in, so you can sort of see a little bit of funniness, but I think that's gonna be just fine. So it can be really cute worn folded down or up. I'm really happy I finished these. This got most of the love. So it was the case where when I saw you guys last, I probably was still working on the heel flap. I managed to, or I don't know, something like that. I think I might have even been through a decent part of the gusset. So I motor through the foot and the toe on the first travel day, started the second sock on the first travel day, and then motored through the rest of the sock with all of the hanging out and that sort of thing. So I finished Saturday. Plenty of time. No big deal at all. So I don't know why I was in such a rush, but it'd be the case where I did want to get this to the recipient's dad because it's a gift. Not because it's Christmas, but because I felt inspired to give something. So, there you go. Super cute socks. I was also amused that the size 6 foot is only like half an inch shorter than my foot. So there really isn't that big of, like, you know when you put on shoes you're like, oh man, that's not working at all. Like, it really is a pretty small difference between things. So since I remember the sock blockers, I also threw this pair on the blockers so you could see its gorgeousness. And what the hell, we'll also do the little shimmy shimmy so you can see the very pretty part. There we go. So now you can also see the very cool pattern that's on this as well. So hopefully that showcases it a little bit better. So this is the Everdeen sock by Ivana Reynolds, and it did get some more love. Not a ton of love, but it did get more. So this is now my only sock project on the needles. Thank goodness. And I don't know, I don't like having that many on at the same time. And then there's a little bit of a problem because I was knitting the other socks on double points, and at some point I was going to have to switch to double points, at least for the heel flap area. But I'm pretty close to done with the leg now. I have a couple more rows. So I think you're supposed to stop like 1 or 2 rows in the pattern repeat before the end and actually break off the, basically split off the heel from there. So, it's soon. Would it be? I probably have, I don't know, I'm pretty close. There's like maybe 8 more rows and then it's good. So that just sounded like a lot, but yeah, whatever. So for comparison, obviously we have some stitching issues here, but that's not the end of the world. So yeah, we'll be okay. So it'd be the case where the cable then continues down the back of the foot, but the rest of it is ripping, so I need to get to the point where it actually can be split off nicely. So it is coming along. I think once I turn the heel, it's going to go much faster because it'll be like, it's almost over, yay! I think the other thing is that it's a bit less fiddly to work with because the bottom of the foot is stuck in it. So that decreases how much effort I need to do. Like, I love how it's turning out. I love how beautiful and intricate and gorgeous it is, and I love my yarn, which is Trekking XXL, with like this subtle sort of like, is that hand spun? No, it's not. It's indestructible. Like, there's a lot that I really like about the sock, but it's just totally not what I want to work on. So hopefully I can like get that monkey off my back. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. Sweet delicious coffee. So I do have a ton of yarn left over from the sock. I'm not sure. I probably don't have, I don't know. It doesn't seem like too much of this, but the ball sort of collapsed on me. And then this guy, what is it? Seems like I have a lot of this, but it did get much squishier as it went. So it was, I might be able to make something pretty decent with the leftovers, or maybe like shorty socks. I don't know. I talk about shorty socks all the time, but I never make them. Oh, whatever. And then I did cast on something new. I put it in my Fats Glow bag because it is a 3-skein project. So if you follow me on Instagram, I was sort of distracted on Tuesday and had Excel up in front of me, and so then I started to figure out what sort of striping sequence I wanted to have. And so, let's see, can we actually show you the yarn in the bag? Maybe the bottom skein is being challenging, but it is there. So I have 3 skeins of Madeline Tosh, 2 in the 80-10-10 Sport, and 1 in Pashmina. And I was going to knit this for coworkers, but then I saw how much money was in the yarn. I'm like, oh, I can't. I did get the yarn on a screaming sale, but that was, it was still like entirely too much. Just the skein of Pashmina was like going over the limit for the thing, so I'm like, you know what, not so much. So I started a variant of the Chevron Infinity Delight cowl, but I am working this pattern in the round, so that I have like a tube cowl instead, and I am doing 3 colors. So really I just stole the chevron repeat from the pattern, and that was about it. But that was probably the closest thing to the pattern, and I've done 1 full repeat now, which is, we'll measure. So I've done 1 full read of the pattern. Well, a smidgen more, but you get the point. And there's a certain amount of distortion because the chevrons do change the shape. So okay, so we're talking 7 inches for that first pattern repeat, but it appears that I have oodles of yarn, so we'll see how things come together. I really am digging this lot. I had to rip back several times because I kept changing my intent. One of the times I didn't put my center of round in the right spot, so it was moving. That was not good. Then I, you can see my little sneaker stitch marker here, which is my center of round. Then I ended up ripping back because I realized that I needed garter ridges between my color changes, so that ends up making a more graphic looking thing there, which I was digging. And when I ended up doing the change of round one, I ended up having a little bit of a boo-boo where my provisional cast on zippered like it was supposed to, but not when it was supposed to. So hopefully I can sort of recreate what that's supposed to be. We'll figure something out. And now I'm just really digging how things are coming together. So it got a lot of work on the second travel day. Got to put in a bunch of stuff. It was like, can I get to the pattern repeat by the time the airplane gets to the gate? No. I think that was by the time we got back to the car. So, it is not a completely mindless project, because, what is it? Because on the pattern rows, it's like do, or like something 6 stitches, something 6 stitches, back and forth. So I'm doing a lot of counting to 6 while working on it, but it's not too crazy. So my hope is to get a pretty big loop and then graft the ends together, but obviously we are far from that right now. And I'll try to use as much of the yarn as possible. The short answer is what's going to end up happening is that what I have planned here is that after I do the last little single green row, then I will graft together with the magenta, which is the pashmina. So the bright blue and the bright green are the 80-10-10 sport, so merino, cashmere, nylon, and then pashmina is actually much more luxurious. Pashmina is 75-15-10, which is merino, silk, and cashmere, and has way more yardage. So part of the simulation was actually just sitting down and figuring out, like, okay, I have more yardage of the pashmina, so what ratio of stripes do I start hitting the right ratio of yardage? So there's like, what is it? There's 250 yards of the sport in a skein, and then there was like much more. It really is more like a DK, and then 360 yards of the pashmina per skein. I have one skein of each. So what I decided to do was to tie it all together with the the magenta pashmina, and then break up the stripes. So I had the calculations ended up working out to be, I could do 7 rows of the blue and the green, and then 10 rows of the pashmina. So what I ended up doing was then breaking it up, so then I had 5 pashmina, 7 green, 5 pashmina, 7 blue. And then what I did next was sort of broke it up a little bit. And then I realized when I wanted to do the garter ridges, so then I doubled everything, so now it's 14 and 20. Which resulted in a 7-inch first pattern repeat. So hopefully I'll be able to make a decent sized thing with this. It certainly is very fun colors. It probably is close enough to go with my outerwear, whatever, or we'll just go with things are random anyways. But so that will be going. It certainly is a much more mindless project than the sock is, but I might end up carrying around both for a while just to see, so that it is available when the mood strikes. In terms of new things, I'll have to figure out whether or not I'm starting the toy soon or not. Hopefully it's not too crazy, but I haven't gotten to the point where I've actually like wound the yarn, so we'll just do the wait and see approach there. On the spinning front, I did finish something. So, I was showing you guys last week that I was spinning my little sample of Romney fleece. So this is in the grease, spun it on my Bosworth spindle. I got a little bit more than 22 yards with that little guy, and I do need to probably scour this a little bit, so I'll be figuring out what to do there. But you can sort of see that it definitely has that yellowy lanolin tint to it, and some of that probably is dirt as well. So, but it'd be the case where it must be fairly fine, all things considered. I don't even know what that is. Oh, that's probably not. So it is, would it be fairly nice? It'd be the case where for some reason, or just the way I've been spinning lately, it ended up being fairly fine at the end. So I could definitely see how making, say for example, a really fine and drapey sweater might be a good use for this, because it is a long wool. We shall see. Then I've been working on plying up doing the first round of applying for my singles. So this is what I have so far. So this is where I was watching a movie last night. But so I've been two-plying it, and it is all sorts or whatever. So sort of mixing up the shades of tealing, gray, and tan and brown together. And then I will be two-plying again. So I am using my ludicrous ratio still to apply this to make sure that I have plenty of plying twist in the yarn, but I still have quite a lot to go, so there was no hope in getting it all done today, to be quite frank. Would I like to get it done? Absolutely, because November is almost over. So this is my 11th bin spin, and I have one more to go. What I forgot to bring with me was, I did end up splitting up my nest, so I'm doing the CTA style. I got the Madame Pompadour colorway, which has like browns and reds and blues. Maybe other color? I don't know. So I decided I want to do a 3-ply 2 ways. So I have one big one, which will have long color runs, and then I ended up setting up for a 3-ply fractal with the other one. And in this case, it's going to be a simple fractal because it's simple. You're just ripping it up into lots of teeny weeny shreds, and it makes sense. So everything has been balled up and ready to go, and everything's the right orientation and the whole bit. I don't know whether or not that'll be next on my wheel or not. I still haven't ended up buying a hackle yet to mix all of my top and make a big top out of it. So I do want to mix them up, and that's probably the best tool for it. There wasn't a deal on the Woolery when I ended up checking. I was also very surprised because there seemed to be such a big difference between the price point for most of the hackles and then the Modulcraft one. I was like, wow. It was at least $100 more, so that was interesting. But such is life. And then whether or not it makes sense to look for super fine combs or not, I'm guessing no. Whatever. And then my husband had lots of questions like, how in the world do you spin wool anyways? So that was interesting. So it turns out that if you're talking about an industrial process, it actually goes through, or what would it be? It ends up going through several different steps in order to make that happen. So in an industrial process, you would scour, dry, then go through a picker to break everything, to open everything up, then go through a carder, and then take the stuff coming off the cards and split it into sliver. And if you're doing a woolen spun yarn, you would spin the sliver. If you decide that you actually want to have comb top, you would take the sliver and then start running it through combs. And that's where the comb top that we know and love comes from. Now, in terms of what in the world a massive combing machine looks like, I don't know. See, because you can buy a drum carder, so that's the industrial scale thing, scaled down to human size. But I don't think that there is an equivalent, like, automatic combing machine. So you just have to do it yourself. But I think in order to pull the big tops off, you have to start from a bunch of fiber on a long length. So I believe that from that perspective, you need to have like long tines and a broad width. So in that way, I think the hackle is probably the closest or is a way of moving closer to something more production. Not that I'm planning on starting a business with handcomb top, but I want to mix it better. And we'll see if my dyed-in-the-wool experiment actually makes sense or not. Options. But I haven't quite gotten to the point, or whatever, I haven't been quite ready to pull the trigger on that one yet. And what's that? Not supposed to be there. So I did get a little bit more progress done on my spin, but obviously I still have a huge ball of fiber. But I did get a little bit further on my yak silk spin. So this is 50/50 yak silk from Greenwood Fiber Arts, and it is divine. I think my poor little other balls are looking fairly squished in the bottom of my bag. You guys can't even see. Maybe they're popping out. But so it's still going along slowly. I did manage to get through most of the latest blue section. But what would it be? It's slowly but surely moving along. So it is lovely to work with. I didn't end up doing too much spinning because I was much more focused on the sock FO this week instead. So I did have plenty of stuff with me. I probably didn't need to start a new project. Or the only reason I needed to start a project was because I needed something boring to work on. Oh well. So, that'd be. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was I ended up going by Half Price Books. So they generally have like overstock stuff, and I ended up picking up a copy of Clara Parks' The Knitter's Book of Yarn. I had a chance to I had a chance to The Knitter's Book of Yarn. So I had a chance to read this, yesterday and today, or yesterday? Yeah, it was mostly yesterday. So I did manage to get through all of it. What I didn't realize was that it actually had knitting patterns on it. So, and so it was the case where throughout the book they were referencing the patterns just, be like, hey, this is a good example of when you want this sort of construction and this sort of fiber together. And so I would say, in terms of a resource, it was really interesting. And especially with respect to maybe myth debunking. So why is it that Kiviat and alpaca don't felt? There's a logical reason why it is that wool is much more prone to and would it be very interesting with respect to, say, for example, breaking down would it be between your protein fibers, so all of the hair off various animals, sort of a subcategory for silk because it's not really quite the same process. Then the plant fibers, plain and simple. And honestly, there's only 3 plant fibers, plain and simple: cotton, linen, hemp. After that, you then get into silk-like things. And so that's the case where that has to do with plant fibers that have sort of been broken down into a monomer and then made a polymer again. So it'd be the case where it takes a lot more chemicals and whatnot in order to break down into that raw material and then basically draw it out like silk's made. So that is your like tencel, C-cell, bamboo, and then some of the other more bizarre ones that you've been seeing out there, like rose and milk and that sort of thing. Like, really, it just boils down to taking the plant matter, breaking it down into cellulose, and then drawing the cellulose out to form fiber. And then the true acrylics. So wonderful things like, whatever. We can all agree that nylon is pretty awesome. It does end up, what would it be, being a little bit odd. Or would it be, or that there's something very beautiful when you mix wool with nylon. And that nylon has many names, including polyamide. So if you got yarn from Germany, it says polyamide, that's nylon. And then other true, like acrylic and polyester and that sort of thing. Apparently polyester generally doesn't show up in the United States. So I just found it to be very interesting in terms of breaking things down and being like a source, because sometimes you're like looking on the internet and you're like, some of this I know is marketing. And then she goes into woolen versus worsted and what that means for your projects and what that looks like when it's swatched. And then sort of going into a bit into ply structure, and then sort of introducing ply structure and then going into a couple patterns with that. So ply structure for when you have no ply, so you have singles. Like patterns that are good for 2-ply yarns, 3-ply yarns, cable ply yarns, and then she goes into some of the more, what would it be, things like boucle, Chanel, other crazy textured things, like knitted, tube yarns, that sort of thing. So it was interesting. So like for example, Kestrel, like, isn't that Brooklyn Tweed one? Possibly. So that's a linen yarn that has been made into a tube, so that it gives the linen stretch because it's already knit. So it's a little knit tube, so it gives linen stretch it doesn't normally have. So I would say it was primarily geared towards knitters. It would probably be, interesting. It was very interesting from like a spinner's perspective to sort of breaking down how, as I make and construct yarn, like what the implications of that are. So it was cool. I did enjoy it. I got a schooling or whatever. I got a pretty decent deal on the book. Not that it has any markings for sale. I don't know what its regular price is, but what if we ended up picking it up for $8? So I figured that was worth it. There were a bunch of interesting books there, but this was the one that called to me the most, so it was interesting. So I'll be adding it to my collection of references, and it was interesting because the end it has like this list of good references, so I had a couple of them already, so it was like, yes, my knitting library is coming along nicely, like the principles of knitting, and all of Barbara Walker's stitch pattern books. So apparently what was missing were things that Clara Parks had recommended owning were actually Ann Budd's Handy Book of Knitting Designs and Handy Book of Sweaters. I have a friend who has that and really likes it a lot. And then some maybe more specific things if you're very excited about a certain thing. So there was one of them if you were very interested in Angora and whatever else. So it was very interesting. So I'll have to add it to my library so that at least, like, if it turns out that any of the patterns do strike my fancy, I can do them. I think the cutest pattern that I saw was a Nora Gone pattern. So I've knit the beatnik before. Let's see if we got a beauty shot. So, for some reason I just really liked the cable swing curdy. Obviously, not the orange color, but I thought it was interesting construction. So that was in the 3-ply section, but I thought it was cute. But what was it? So it was interesting. It's not like I normally do a lot of book reviews, but it's comforting to have like some suspicions confirmed. I think the most interesting part to me was sort of breaking down like all the different types of fiber and what's going on and what it's good for and not, and that sort of thing. Okay. I think that I've succeeded in showing you guys everything. So, a little bit longer this week, but whatever. A lot to share. So I should be able to record next week. That will be the 2nd or the 3rd, depending on mood. So we're nearly to December. Crazy. And then I'll have to figure out sort of what the recording schedule will look like in December, because there will be some holes. Like, if I'm to use my magic ball, the odds are maybe bad for the last 2 weeks in December, but who knows. What it'd be, I think it's the case where what's ending up happening, so it'd be the case where one of those weeks will be with my family, and then one of the next week, my husband's family will be down. So we shall see. They're trying to figure out all the logistics. I'm probably gonna end up working that week, so, or at least part of it. But such is life. I probably need to call my parents and firm up our plans too, so. But, oh well, whatever. So, that's my rough guess. So, with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talk guys next week. So, take care guys. Bye-bye.